I'll start by saying that nothing could have prepared me for what I was going to discover the morning after a night out. It started as every other night would. Me and my family got ready to head to our local bar for a fundraising event. I had just turned 18 and was looking forward to having a chill night with friends and family. I knew most of the people there, so I was feeling really relaxed. While at the bar, I went to pay for my drink when the bartender told me it had already been paid for. When I went to see who had paid for it, I saw my cousin's partner. He is around 12 years older than me, give or take. I gave him a quick wave, and we did the normal niceties like hi, how are you doing? It's important to note that I had barely spoken more than 2 words to him before, as he was usually quiet or retreated to his room when we would go and visit my cousin. After saying thank you, I thought nothing of it. Nothing seemed off with our little interaction. By the end of the night, I had gathered my family together and told them I wanted to head home. At this point in time, I was still living at home with my mother. She had made plans to stay at my grandmother's that night, so I was going to go home and sleep. It was around 11:30 p.m., and I was outside having a smoke and about to head to my car. Just as I was about to head to my car, I heard someone call my name, so I turned to find my cousin's partner walking towards me. He asked if I was heading home for the night, which I thought was weird. So I said it was late, so I was calling it a night. Without skipping a beat, he mentioned the car that I drive and said he would see me around sometime. At this point, I got a bit creeped out, so I said goodnight and walked off to my car. There were plenty of people outside, so I wasn't concerned at all. Once I got in the car, my phone went off, and it was my mother. She was begging and pleading with me to go and stay at my grandmother's house for the night, saying that she had a really bad feeling. Initially, I was really annoyed. I just wanted to go home and go to sleep in my own bed, but she insisted. I couldn't understand why. I was used to being alone at home at night, but she wouldn't let it go. I hung up and started driving home. I couldn't be bothered going to my grandma's when my house was just down the road. I was tired. I just wanted to go home. Not even halfway home, my phone went off, so I pulled over to check it. It was my sister asking me to please go stay at my grandma's house. I was pissed off at this point and decided it would be easier to go to my grandma's house instead of arguing with my family. When I got to my grandma's house, everyone was asleep. Now I was really pissed off and went straight to sleep. The night was uneventful, but I woke in the morning to my family talking about how they all had a feeling of dread, which is why they didn't want me to go home alone that night. My mother and I left for home at lunch. I felt off as soon as we pulled into the driveway. Once I got to the door, I found a police card wedged into the door to call them ASAP. I went inside and found my mother's camera on the kitchen table. This was a huge red flag, as it was in my bedroom before we left for the fundraiser. I went to my room to find that my entire room had been ransacked. No other room in our house had been touched. My blankets had been pulled back, and it looked like someone had been in my bed. My knickers were wide open, and some were also sprawled on the floor. Another camera of my mother's was also on the table where my TV was, which was directly opposite my bed. Clothes were everywhere. By this point, I was losing my mind. If I had gone home like the plan all along, I would have made my way through the house and then crawled into bed without switching my lamp on. I had done this so many times previously, and I wouldn't have seen the state of my room at all. My mother gave them a call to find out what happened, and what she told me made the blood drain from my face. Police were alerted to a break-in at our next-door neighbor's house when our neighbors found a man wandering inside their house. The man claimed he was my friend and went into the wrong house, and they chased him out. Our house had a big 8 by 12 foot deck that looked over my neighbor's house. They called the police again when they spotted the same man smoking on our deck. The police arrived at our house at 2 a.m. But since I wasn't home, no one answered the door. They noticed the lights on, so they went inside to investigate. They made their way through the house and found a man hiding in my bedroom in the dark. He couldn't give a reason why he was there or why he was hiding in my room. They had arrested him, taken him to the station, and wanted to know if we knew him. Turns out it was my cousin's partner, and he had been hiding in my bedroom for over an hour. waiting for me to get home because he knew I would be going home that night. My mother's gut feeling saved me from going home alone that night, and my neighbor's vigilance helped catch a creep. I always listen now without question whenever she has a bad feeling. Who knows what would have happened? All I know is that it wouldn't have been pretty. He was charged with breaking and entering and spent some time in jail before being released and moving to another country. Always trust your mother's gut feelings, people. It sure saved me from having to deal with that. I think I've posted this story as a comment somewhere before, but nonetheless, I'm going to share it again. So, I've always been open to paranormal things. I recall several things as a child, but the older I get, the less I see adulthood and responsibilities have overtaken my ability to see things that I once did. I had a son in January of 2011. By 2013, when he was almost 2 years old, we had moved out of my mother's house into our own apartment. It was kind of a rushed ordeal, as my mother and I butted heads a lot, and as soon as I had the money, I went to the first available opening. The apartment manager had actually asked me to hold on for an extra 2 weeks, because, as she said, some girls were moving to Florida and left the place a mess, and it needed cleaning up. She never asked for a credit check, any references, or anything else. It was just an okay. I'll let you know as soon as the rental is up to par. I moved in probably a month after she said I could have the unit. Upon moving in, I had a strange but comforting feeling. I started out with nothing but a box of toys and a nice blow-up mattress for myself and my almost 2-year-old son to share. It was a 2-bedroom apartment with 1 bathroom and lots of closet space. Eventually, we made it home. But one day, my son was in the spare bedroom, which was going to be his room, and started laughing. A hearty baby laugh that takes work to muster from any baby. Really. I walk in, and he is staring at a corner and acting as though he doesn't even see me in there. Then suddenly, he stops. Anyone with a child knows that this is a little odd. The child will normally look to the source of entertainment for more. But my son just stopped and toddled toward me as if told to do so. It seemed odd, but I dismissed it. Fast forward a few months. We've got our own beds. Although I let him sleep in mine, and I awakened one night to him belly laughing once again, full-on giggles in the darkness. Nothing but the moonlight through the sheer curtains is bouncing from my face onto his, since I'm the one facing the window, and he's looking over my shoulder into the darkness. A big smile is spread over his face as I say, "What's so funny, my honey?" And he says, "The Mayan," as he's still gazing over my shoulder. But then his smile gets scared and serious, and he puts his tiny finger over his lips as though he's mimicking someone, and he says, "Shuh, no mama, no man, go nan." Needless to say, I did not go out that night. Days and weeks passed, and small incidents happened where he'd be laughing or talking about his friend. I started not worrying about it because, to me, it wasn't that big of a deal. He stopped being creepy at night. One day, though, he was in what was supposed to be his room, just cracking up and laughing once again. When he came into the living room, I asked him, "What's so funny in there, bud?" And he replied, "The man. He's funny. He tells me jokes. He's not a monster. He tells me jokes. He's nice, mama." I was like, "Oh, ooh, ooh, ooh." He's got an imaginary friend. Wonderful. Whatever. This goes on for another week or two, until one day he's in his room having a full conversation. I don't recall what. I just remember hearing him chat in there as if having an actual conversation, and him repeating a word I knew he didn't know. Too big for an almost 2-year-old's vocabulary. He comes into the living room and I ask again, "Who are you talking to in there?" He says, "The man, mama." I knew I shouldn't ask, but I did, and I said, "What's the man look like?" And he replies, "Bumpy. He's bumpy, mom. Look like a monster, but not a moonster, mom. He nice. He tells me jokes. He nice." I am sitting there like, okay, cool, this is totally an imaginary friend. All is fine. And that was that. A few days later, I wake up suddenly to a fight in the hallway. My next door neighbor had come home drunk and was banging on her apartment door like a complete psycho. I had grown up rather comfortable in a town where literally locking your doors was optional. So for once, I went to the door to lock it, so this woman wouldn't accidentally open my door, and it was already locked. The door handle, the deadbolt, and the chain lock. I had never locked the deadbolt, let alone the chain lock. I was confused, but wrote it off as me being a tired mom. The next morning, bright and early, my son wakes me to say, "Mama, the man saves us. He locked the door from Bad Lady." Mama, again, I write it off as he heard the commotion the night before and credited his imaginary friend for my actions. Later that day, I had just gotten a carload of groceries and I took the first few bags in and up the stairs, and I got a movie in for my son to occupy him while I got the rest inside. I go out on maybe my third or fourth trip, and a neighbor catches me. She's my age. I hadn't met her before, but she seems kind. She approaches me and introduces herself, then asks, maybe this isn't appropriate, but how much did you pay for that apartment? I didn't exactly know the rules for how units were priced, or what have you, so I just vaguely asked why. And she said, "Well, did they tell you what happened there?" And I was like, "No." Ooh, they both had that, like, genetic disease where you get bumps or polyps all over your skin. The son killed himself in the spare bedroom by overdosing. Nobody knew for days. They had all sorts of cleaning crews in there. It's a shame too, because he'd always tell my kids jokes and say, "See, I tell jokes. I'm not a monster." He was so sweet to my boys. He was so worried about scaring them. He'd always tell them jokes. This happened to me about 11 years ago when I was walking home from a friend's house at night. I'll just get straight into it. I used to live in a rural part of the UK and have lived in rural areas most of my life, so I was used to long walks. Occasionally, at night, especially before I could drive, they never bothered me too much. I'd get creeped out occasionally, but this one night was the most terrifying experience I ever had. There was this one friend who used to live roughly 3 miles away from my house. He had cool parents and my other friends, and I would often go over to his house and play video games and hang out. Occasionally, this meant walking home at night if I stayed late. There were 2 ways back from his house. The road, which was about 5 miles long and took about 30 to 45 minutes. The roads were very quiet and eerie sometimes, but they were lit by street lamps, so it never bothered me walking this way. The other way was a shortcut through some woods, which took off about 2 miles, and the wooded bit was about a mile or so long. I often favor the wooded slope and have probably walked it over 100 times. The woods were dark. However, combined with the lack of ambient light due to living in a rural area, you had absolute abyssal darkness. Luckily, most of the time I had my phone light to walk with, but sometimes my phone would die, or the battery would be so low that the flash wouldn't work, and I'd have to use my screen light. As you've probably guessed by now, this was one of those occasions. I remember my friends and I having just finished watching a film. It was nearing 10 p.m., so we all left my friend's house and headed our separate ways home. I contemplated briefly which way I should go and decided to take the shortcut through the woods. I started walking away from his house and towards the path that headed into the woods. The streetlights dimmed as I entered the fields before the woods. I glanced at my phone and saw my battery was really low. There was only enough power left for a couple of minutes of flash, and then I'd have to use my screen for light. That wouldn't last the whole way either. As I saw the tree line approaching, I switched on the flash and followed the well-trodden path into the dark. To my dismay, my light died within seconds of entering, and I flipped my phone over to try and shine the way using the screen. As I walked, I looked out for all of the familiar landmarks I was used to seeing to ensure I was heading in the right direction. A funky tree stump, a half-fallen fir tree, an enormous puddle I had to jump over. All was going well. I was halfway through the woods when my phone completely died. I remember the moment it happened. I was engulfed in darkness. I'm not sure if you've experienced this level of darkness before, but it was so dark, I couldn't even see the outline of my hand centimeters in front of my face. Naturally, my pace slowed considerably, and I started holding my hand out in front of me to make sure I wasn't going to walk into a tree or something. I continued walking for another minute or so, until all of a sudden a pungent smell hit me. Cigarette smoke. I glanced around but couldn't see anything. Then I heard it, a cough. I wasn't alone. Thoughts raced through my head. Who would be out in the woods in the dark? Are they following me? I quickened my pace again, throwing a little caution to the wind. I carried on walking and tripped slightly on a branch. As I regained my balance, I heard another sound. Branches breaking underfoot. What it sounded like right behind me, the snapping turned into fast footsteps that grew louder and louder. I started sprinting. I felt the well-trodden path turn to brush. I felt branches, logs, and plants hitting my legs. It wasn't long before I fell. I was lying on the floor, holding my knee. I could still hear branches snapping around me and a voice muttering something. I didn't dare move. Then, all of a sudden, they turned on a torch. I couldn't see anything except for the beam of light, which seemed to be eaten quickly by the darkness of the forest. I lay motionless on the ground as the beam swept through the trees. I could still hear the person mumbling with a deep growl. The crunching of footfalls grew and grew. They were only several feet from me by this point. I couldn't breathe. The light went out. The snapping of branches grew and then nothing. Quiet. My eyes were wide open, but I couldn't see anything. Then I could hear wheezing. Right above me. I wanted to cry. I wasn't sure if the person could see me or not. They could have been staring right at me, and I wouldn't know. This carried on for about 5 minutes until the crunching of leaves and snapping of twigs started up again and got fainter and fainter as they moved away from me. I remained lying down for another 5 or 10 minutes, contemplating my escape. Like an idiot, I'd run off the path and wasn't sure which way was back to it, or was home. I didn't really care, I thought. I was going to walk in one direction until I left the woods and get home from there. I knew as soon as I started moving again, if the person was still in the woods, they would hear me. Should I run or try to sneak out? I opted for the latter. I slowly rose to my feet, listening constantly to my surroundings. Picked a direction and started walking. I wasn't perfectly quiet, but I was quiet enough to be sure I wouldn't be heard from too far away. I kept hearing snapping sounds and rustling in the distance, and every time I froze, I'd hold my breath until I was happy no one was there, and then start walking again. I repeated this pattern for what felt like an eternity until eventually I found the path. I screamed for joy in my mind and sped up my pace. After another 10 minutes, I saw it. Light. Streetlights filter in through the trees. I'd never been so happy to see a meager street lamp, but as I progressed to the end of the woods, my heart sank. At the end of the path, there was a black silhouette. Unmoving, contrasted against the light background, was the dark figure of a man. What should I do? Maybe it's a different person. Perhaps it's someone walking their dog. I froze and watched them silently, but they didn't move. At all. They just stood there like they were guarding the entrance to the woods. I didn't know what to do. By this point, I'd had enough. I was so close to getting out that I decided to just run straight towards the exit. Straight towards them. I was a 6-foot-tall young man. If they wanted to stop me, they'd have a hard job of it, I thought. So that's what I did. I started sprinting. The figure grew and grew, and as I reached them, I stepped to the side. I heard someone growl "fuck" loudly and felt something clip the back of my head and tug the back of my jacket. I cleared the sheep gate in one leap and sprinted into the light. I eventually stopped running when I saw the first house and looked back. The entrance to the woods was quite far away now, and I couldn't see anyone standing by the entrance. Relaxing a bit more now, I finished my walk home. That's pretty much it. I know I could have overreacted. It could have been someone out for a walk in the woods, a dog walker or a camper. But what I thought was strange was that they didn't use their torch except briefly on one occasion. Once they heard me, they also actively sought me out. Who knows what would have happened if they had caught me? In any case, I never walked that way home alone again. Not at night anyway.